You don't need a six-figure salary to achieve financial freedom. In your 40s, what you need is a plan. Some of the most financially free people I know don't earn massive paychecks. They just do a few simple things consistently. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. In the next few minutes, I'm going to break down a step-by-step plan which can help you change your finances in just a few months. Each step will help you change your finances, but the real value comes from following all the steps in order. So I recommend you watch the video to the end to change your finances fast. Okay, so step one is measure first or nothing changes. You can't change what you don't monitor. If you want to lose weight, you track calories. If you want to grow money, you track money. Monitoring isn't optional. It's actually a requirement for growth. So here's the system you probably currently have. You get paid, you pay your bills, and you spend what's left. But inside that loop, there's data and signals that most people ignore. They put off checking their bank balance after the weekend and they, don't look at their credit card slips. So the first step is about ripping off a band-aid and taking control. You've been passive all along, so now it's time to be active. And to do that, what you need to do is calculate your minimum viable income. This number represents the lowest amount of money you can live on while still meeting your obligations. You're not thriving here. It's not very comfortable, but you can survive. So ask yourself, if everything else went wrong, what is the smallest amount of money I can live on? This number is the backbone of your financial change. You'll see in the rest of the video why what we do in step one is foundational for the financial change you want to make. So here's how you find it. Run a minimal viable income test by cutting everything you can. So first divide your expenses into needs and wants, and then cut all your wants immediately. If it's a want, by definition, it's not a need. Then move on to your needs, and there's definitely more nuance here, right? Like you do need to eat, but you don't have to have luxury food or eat out all the time. You might need entertainment, but you don't need 10 or 15 different subscriptions when a book might take its place. You have to be hard on yourself at this step. It's tough love. This process will make you feel uncomfortable, right? But that's the point, because growth always feels like pressure. It's always a little difficult. And I can guarantee you that you can live off a lot less than you currently do. When you do this, you're going to come to a number which represents how cheaply you can live. Everything else between that and your income is excess, and we can use that excess. And what I'm about to say now is very important to understand, is that money problems are behavioral problems, which basically means that if you change your behavior, you can change your outcomes. You just simply can't change your finances without changing how you act. They're interconnected. So to make a lot of change from what you currently have, you need to be willing to live on your minimum viable income for some time. How long will depend on how much change you want to make. But ultimately, it's temporary, right? You just need some foundation. You just need some momentum. And this is achievable in a relatively short space of time if you commit to it. Remind yourself that it's temporary, but it has purpose. And the great thing here is that changing your finances is a keystone habit, which basically means that it's a habit that affects everything else in your life. Step two is build a buffer so life doesn't break you. So now that we have excess, we can start solving problems. Most people are living paycheck to paycheck or close to it, and it's possible this is the same for you. But that's a terrible position to be in, because life is non-negotiable, right? Like your car will break down, your house will get flooded, emergencies will happen. These financial emergencies are just a fixed cost of life. So if you're living paycheck to paycheck, these things can destroy you. One bad financial emergency at the wrong time could set you back months or even years. So the first problem you need to solve is to end this paycheck to paycheck cycle. And you can do it. And in order to do that, you need to set up an emergency fund. If you have an emergency fund, that unexpected financial bill comes in the door, you survive. So the faster you build this buffer, the faster you escape this paycheck to paycheck cycle. So step two is to set up an emergency fund and save 1 month of minimal viable income. You want to direct 100% of your excess savings into this. Ideally, put it into a high yield savings account that you can access, right? But remember, this is an emergency fund. It's not for holidays or weekends, right? You only use it when there's an emergency. And if there isn't, you don't touch it. Now, of course, 1 month won't make you rich, but what it will do is it will give you stability. And this is a foundation we can build on now in the next steps. So step three is kill high interest debt. Now look, you've probably heard this many times before, but the most basic rule of finance is compounding. But what people don't understand or think about enough is that compounding can work for you or against you. When you're investing, compounding works for you. When you've got debt, especially high interest debt, it's working against you. High interest debt is the most aggressive enemy in the room because it absolutely destroys you over time. You could almost think of it as anti-wealth. You're literally going in the wrong direction. Increasing high interest debt causes a lot of stress and worry in your life. It limits your opportunities and it limits your fun. So in this step, what we're going to do is deal with high interest debt. Start paying it off. Now, the biggest mistake people make here is that they treat all debt as the same, but it's not. There's good debt and there's bad debt. Some debt is productive, like for example, having a mortgage, or some debt is toxic, like having a credit card. So list all of your debt in order, from highest interest to the lowest interest, in that order, and anything that is above 8%, that's what we're going to attack. This is mathematically the fastest way out. So once you have 1 month of minimum viable income, what you want to do is you want to direct all of that excess income towards paying off anything over 8%. Once that debt is gone, it's like removing a chain from your neck. You'll feel completely free. You'll be able to breathe again, right? You'll be able to move into the second part of this plan. The first part is about defense. The second part is about offense. From building a foundation to then growing your wealth and making real change. At this point, your high interest debt is gone, or at least you're dealing with it, and you have 1 month buffer. You're in a strong position. It's now time to invest. Step 4 is start growing your money. What often holds people back here is that they think investing is risky, complicated, or something they just do later. But in fact, investing doesn't have to be overly risky, and it doesn't have to be overly complicated. And in fact, the sooner you start, the better. The thing is, there are many systems set up for you to be able to invest responsibly and simply. There are employer pensions, there's tax advantage investment accounts, there are broad market funds. All of these help you diversify to lower risk. And here's the order in which you go about doing it. So the first thing you do is determine if your employer has a benefit scheme. If they do, max it out. If the company also offers a match, then that's free money, so take it. The second is open up a tax advantage investment account. So in some countries they have these, in some countries they don't. For example, in the UK, you have the ISA. In the US, you have the 401k. So if in your country you have these, make sure to max these out second. So once you've done step 1 and step 2, the third step is to invest in broad market funds. These are ETFs or index funds, whatever you want to call them. And basically, they allow you to invest in an entire market. So you don't have to invest in just one single stock. These are diversified funds, so they have lower risk. You can invest as little as you want, and you can access markets from all around the world, like the S&P 500 that has historically grown by about 10% per year. So taking this approach, you don't need to overcomplicate it. The systems, the infrastructure, the products, they're already set up for you. You just need to do a couple of hours of work and take some action. That's all. Now, this fourth step has 2 parts. So the first part is the investing part that we just spoke about. But the second part is that you want to keep saving and bolstering your emergency fund. If you can, you want to aim for 3 months of minimal viable income. This way, as you invest, you keep building your emergency fund. You're taking care of the upside and the downside. So a good approach is to split your excess. Focus the majority of the money for now in building your emergency fund and the minority of the money into investing. You can start with 70% in the emergency fund and 30% into investing. And then over time, you can move from 50-50 to 70-30 the other way, and eventually 100% into investing. This way, you're building security and wealth at the same time. You're always moving forward. For step 5, we're going to do something different, because up to now, what we've been doing is optimizing for how much you have. But now it's time to increase how much you make, because when you increase how much you make, you increase your capacity. More savings, better life, faster growth. So to do this, there are only just a couple of things you need to do, but I want to make sure that I make this convincing. So I want to frame it in a certain way. So I'm going to explain 2 separate concepts: asymmetry and arbitrage. Asymmetry is just simply when one side of something is greater than the other side. For example, pretty much any tool that you use is asymmetric, right? A hammer, a wrench, whatever it is. It gets its power from the fact that one side is longer than the other. Lots of things can be asymmetrical, tools for example, but also decisions, actions. In fact, investing is asymmetrical. If you think about it, right, that the most you can lose is the amount you invest, but the amount that you can gain is unlimited. Your investment can grow for years, if not decades. So technically, your downside is limited to your investment amount and your upside is unlimited, and therefore there's asymmetry. But there are other asymmetric financial decisions you can make that have just as much of an impact investing, if not more. And that is simply asking for a pay raise. In this case, the downside is uncomfortability or maybe even rejection, where the upside is thousands of dollars more. The value of the positive outcome is just so much greater than the loss of the negative outcome. That's asymmetry. That's a good trade. But the crazy thing here is that statistically, most people don't ask for one, yet statistically, when they do, they get one. You need to understand that there's only one thing stopping you from earning thousands of dollars more, and that's simply an uncomfortable conversation. Now, the second concept I want to explain is arbitrage. It's basically when you buy something in one market and sell it for more in another market. You profit from the price difference between the 2 markets without taking any risk. Imagine you've got 2 friends. One is selling a car for $15,000. Another one wants to buy a car and is willing to spend $16,000. Well, you make those 2 exchanges and you keep $1,000 risk-free. Arbitrage exists in many markets, but it also exists in the labor market. Different companies pay different amounts for the same job. Go look, check out the job market, ask people if you don't believe me. But what you're going to find is that there are people out there getting paid more than you for doing the exact same job. The research is very clear on this. The fastest income jumps don't come from upskilling. What they come from is switching companies. So to take advantage of this arbitrage opportunity, what you need to do is very simple. You just need to sign up to LinkedIn and other recruiters and get updates on your industry, your jobs, that kind of thing. And what you're going to find very quickly is the fact that you're staying at that job means you're leaving money on the table. Obviously, when you find a job at a new company, sign that contract before you leave your first job to eliminate any risk. The whole point of step 5 is that you don't want to wait for your employer to value you. ask for a pay raise, or go to where you're valued most. So the final step is the most simple and the fastest to do, but ironically it has the greatest impact. It will single-handedly be responsible for all your growth and your adherence to this plan. The truth is that all these previous steps, right, living below your means, saving, paying off high interest debt, investing, all of these steps, they come with unlimited decisions, yet you have limited willpower. When these moments in the year come, whether they be weekends, birthdays, holidays, Christmas, whatever it is, if you're relying on willpower, you'll probably fail. And when you fail, you'll fail again, and it'll become some sort of like New Year's resolution that you're trying to fix every single year, repeating the same story over and over again. The only way to truly succeed in changing your finances is to remove willpower from the equation entirely. The secret to financial success isn't discipline. It's automation. So for the final step, you do two things. The first thing is that you automate this whole financial system. Bills and fixed expenses, right? Mortgage payments, car payments, whatever they are, automate them. Automate your savings and investments, right? Pay yourself first. You now have worked out your minimal viable income, right? So you can even open a separate account for the money that you can spend, and when it's gone, it's gone. You can input infrastructure here that's very simple, takes very little time, and will be responsible for all the change in your life. Look, it is possible that you might make these changes through discipline, but if you automate it, you're 100% guaranteed to make these changes. Do your calculations, advise your bank, or do it through your banking app. Set it up once and then it's done. You do this once and I promise you, you'll never look back. This really will be the difference between whether you do it or you don't. Whether you succeed or you don't. Whether you change your financial life or you don't. So the second thing you want to do, let's call it part B of this step, right, is to review and adjust. Your life isn't stagnant, so your finances shouldn't be stagnant. You will make more money. You will have different expenses. You will have different needs. So you need to somewhat regularly check this to make sure it's all still working for your life. So somewhat regularly, just ask yourself, am I saving enough? Has my income risen? Has my savings risen because my income has risen? Right? Just double check that you're on the right track. Do you have the same goals? If not, then change your finances and your financial plan just a little. That's it. It's a very easy thing to do. Build the system once and then just let it run in the background. Look, your financial life, your financial situation comes down to just one thing really. It's control. It's not income, it's control. You figured out the minimum you can live on. You built a buffer so life can't knock you out. You removed debt that was silently stealing your future. You started compounding in your favor. You increased your earning power. And then you automated the whole thing so you don't rely on motivation ever again. None of this is complicated, but it is uncommon. Most people don't do it, and those that do separate themselves from the pack. So you don't need to do all of this today. You just need to start with step one. Calculate your minimum viable income. That number changes everything. It changes how you see your finances. Because once you know what you need, everything else becomes optional. And that's where freedom actually starts. And when you're free, you're rich.